As we're going to be talking about the economy, about monetary policy, about oil, the CIA, and politics, it's important you understand my background. You have a little background on me and how I got interested in this subject. Back in the late 70s, I was selling gold and diamonds as investments, and one of my clients was Allard Lowenstein, who was a congressman from New York. He knew the Kennedy family, and he knew politics in Washington, and he was the first one I really got to know that had an insight into how the world was run. And according to him, John F. Kennedy was killed by elements of our own government at the hand of the CIA, and he was trying to reopen the Warren investigation, as well as the investigation into Bobby Kennedy and others. And he was warned by our government, according to him, that if he pursued, that there'd be dire consequences. His life was threatened. And I ended up being very inspired learning about government and about business through Allard, and ended up going to Menlo College as a junior to study business administration. And it was while taking a class at Menlo that I read in the Wall Street Journal that Allen, this is months later now, had been assassinated, and he thought he would be, and it would be by elements of our own government that didn't want to have exposed these secrets. But the one thing Allen said to me that I'll never forget, he says, "Stephen, if you want to know who controls the world, follow the money." So when I was at Menlo, I decided I was going to study how the world works from a financial perspective, because the world seemed to be run by money. Who runs it? And according to Allen, the Federal Reserve is behind the whole thing. So it turns out one of the world's experts on how the Federal Reserve works was a man named Antonio Bargis, and he was teaching at neighboring Stanford University. So I petitioned my dean at Menlo to study money, credit, and banking at Stanford, and wrote my dissertation on how the Federal Reserve works, or my thesis. And around that same time, I got nominated and ultimately won a Rotary Scholarship to study international banking at the University of Wales. So I left to study banking and monetary policy. I got to study with people that worked for their central banks, as well as with Professor Revel, who was considered an expert in world economics and world monetary policy and how the banking system worked in particular. After getting my degree, my master's degree, it was financial economics. I wrote my dissertation, by the way, on project financing as a means of reducing the country risk in foreign lending. Dry subject. Point bringing it up to you is I'm going to be talking about the economics of the oil development industry and how global banking works, international banking works. And so this is where I got my foundation educationally. Then I went to work for the East-West Center in Hawaii. It was a U.S. government think tank, and I did research on foreign-based mineral extraction projects like offshore oil drilling or copper and gold mining, and got to see and work with the IMF and the World Bank and the IMF is the International Monetary Fund, so how all these global institutions work together and work with governments on developing their resources, and wrote papers on commodity price stabilization and areas of the economics of resources. I ended up from there going to work for Lloyd's Bank and working in the international department. So I've made loans to other governments and to other banks and restructured debt to other countries, and I understand, I have a front row seat in this, and see how the effects of certain monetary policy affect people's lives and banking. And most people don't see this, and that's why I'm making a point to share it with you. Is I got into the nitty-gritty of how these deals are made and what happens depending on what policies you're using and so forth. From there, I ended up being a consultant to different banks, including Bank of America, most of the big ones you've heard, and segueing into some mortgage banking, both in the origination side as a national sales manager and on the back end selling collateralized mortgages. From there, going into investment banking, getting my Series 7 and 63 NASD licenses so I could trade and work on mergers, acquisitions, equity financing. I was a fund advisor to some of the world's largest funds, investing in technology, investing all over the world. So I have 30 years of experience working in money and banking and finance, and not that I'm the expert at it, but there's a lot of things you're not learning through the media. There's a lot of things most people just don't know of how money and banking works. And I do, and I have a solution. The point being is dire straits as we seem to be in, there's a way out, and I'm just dying to tell someone. So I need your help in telling other people what it is that we got to do to turn this economy around and live with prosperity, happiness, and peace once again. So that's what this is being teed up for. Me showing you or teaching you how we can turn this economy around to create more prosperity, happiness, and peace. And we'll continue on in the next lecture. Look forward to sharing with you more.